So it's spring here in the UK and I should be answering three really important questions. Firstly, is it a good time to repot my Japanese maples, and if so, into what size pots and which ones are ready for repotting? Secondly, is it a great time to prune my trees, or will it do more harm than good? And finally, why is it the case that some of my maples haven't leafed out yet when others absolutely have? Hi there maple fans, and in this series of videos I'll be sharing what I do throughout an entire year on a monthly basis. Please note that these months are based on UK timings, but of course can easily be adapted to anywhere else in the world. So here we have three typical pots, 15cm, 17cm and 25cm, 6, 6 3/4 or 10 inch if you prefer. And the question we're asking, and will be revealed at the end, is which of these three maples would you repot and into which pot would you pot them? So we've got a nice little fellow here, lovely example of kimchi. Just for interest, these were all bought last year and I decided not to repot them at all because they weren't ready, so that might be a bit of a hint. You've got Murasaki Kiyohime, I think that's about right. Again, a lovely little tree, leafed out really well, looking good. Moving on to tree number 3. So again, another little autumn moon here. A little bit of growth of twigs and stuff on the top, ignore that. The question is, would you repot this one? So thinking about the sort of what's going on there. And finally, we've got the fourth contender, which is Benimako. So I've got two of these Benimakos, one which is a sort of bought from a supermarket. This was bought from all these were bought from a really good Acer supplier. Would you repot that one perhaps? So all those answers will be revealed at the end, so do watch all the way through and I'll let you know what I believe is the best way forward. So moving on to the subject of why some of your maples haven't leafed out yet, or maybe none of them have leafed out yet depending on where you are in the world. Appreciating this is quite a worrying time, you may not have seen them in leaf and you're desperate to see what they're going to look like perhaps. And here we've got a maple, a viridis in Ashby de la Zouche in the Midlands in the UK. And here's my version of it. So I do love going out and about and finding maples here, there and everywhere. It just is great for comparison and getting ideas and sort of get that list going of what you're looking for. This one's of mine has got lots of little flowers on them. Another little bonus question answered there. That's all they are. All these trees flower eventually. Some not every season, some every season. It's just one of these variations really. But as you can see, not too dissimilar there. Moving on to a Katsura here, which is in the same place. This is not a very old tree really, and as you can see, it's in the ground. It's grown considerably, and as you can see there, there's it's pretty well advanced. It's probably not completely leafed out yet, but we're certainly getting there with it. And just a lovely example of a really nice tree, to be honest. So looking at my my own Katsura here, I had this about 4 years now. It's quite interesting because the leaves are a different colour. Again, different location. It's in a pot. I fed it a few weeks ago, which is what I do. There's a previous video on that. But this is a lovely little tree, lovely red bark on this one, and lovely red fringing of the leaves as well. It does suffer a bit of burn in the summer, so I might have to relocate that actually. So that's something worth thinking about. But lots of new growth there because I leave them in the same position. You can see it impacting on the tree next to it. But essentially, it's sort of in the same kind of situation, but it just is a much smaller scale, so to speak. So this is back to the Arboretum, and it's an Orange Dream. Bearing in mind that genetically all these Orange Dreams are the same, they're all sort of grafted trees, so you might think they do exactly the same thing, but no, in this particular location, it's not leafed out completely yet. It's starting, you can definitely see that. And I find with Orange Dream, it tends to sort of leaf out from the ends and then move inwards, which is, again, a slight variation, which is quite interesting. But that's the particular one that they've got there, and that's the state that it finds itself in, really. So now we have another Orange Dream, bigger one this time, in the ground. Again, in the same way, and it's really rather different. So slightly different location, bit more sun, bit less sun. Really good location for this actually, because this is really sheltered. So in the case of Orange Dream, it really doesn't like direct sunlight at all. And it's under an awful lot of shading, and perhaps, you know, it's guesswork here, but perhaps that's why it's in a more advanced state. Really, it's kind of happier. It's we've had quite a lot of direct sunshine here in the UK. This is in a really, really good spot, and it's well into its leafing out process. Then if you move to my own Orange Dream here, as we can see, this is a potted one. I've got one in the ground I'll show you shortly. It's really quite advanced. It's leafed out quite nicely. And in this lovely sheltered area, it's got shelter from the wind. It's got shelter from sun as well, because I've got sort of a bamboo roof above here. And it's doing very nicely, thank you. So it's not quite there yet, but it's definitely more advanced than, you know, some of the other trees in different locations. And as promised here, we've got my Orange Dream that's in the ground, which is interesting because it's put on a great deal of growth. A lot of that top growth is all new. But again, some people say, well, in the ground they leaf out quicker. This one hasn't. Some leaves, yes. Some of these are still very small. They're still developing. So the lesson here is don't worry about it, to be honest with you. Every tree's different. Every location's different. So as long as it's started to leaf out by now, and, you know, at least it's got really swollen buds on it, things will be, you know, absolutely fine, to be honest with you. And lastly, I've got my own tree here, which is an Irene. And like many of you, this is one particular tree. For whatever reason, it just hasn't hardly started leafing out. But as long as it's like this and it's sort of thinking about it, it's absolutely fine. So the big message from me, do not worry. Your tree's going to be okay. Just let nature take its course, really. And just to say, if you'd like to come with me on my Acer journey, please do like and subscribe to my little channel. It really, really helps. I've also recently set up a Patreon site, so that's a great way of supporting me too, and help out with some of the costs of my excursions, really. There's also the offer of some personal help, if you'd like it, either in a group format or on a one-to-one basis. So looking at this little fellow here, so this is a tree that was bought from a garden centre last year. Absolutely fine. I mean, people have different budgets, people have different expectations. This is a little Benny Mako, and I fed it again a few weeks ago now. It's putting on loads of new spring growth, which again is why you want to do this in the spring, because you don't want lots of new growth in the autumn. It could get die back, it sort of the frost can get it, sort of thing. But because of all this new growth that's appearing, it really is sort of looking a bit gangly. We also do have a bit of dieback from last year there, so where we've got completely white wood at this stage, then that's okay. In fact, you find if it's from last year and you do that, it just breaks off anyway. It's pretty clear by this stage what is living wood and what is dead. I don't have a problem with pruning off dead wood whatsoever. I'd probably leave about sort of 10 millimetres, 1 centimetre of wood there anyway, just as a bit of precaution, because they will die back to a sort of node on the branches as where the sort of two leaves come off. But yeah, you can certainly give it a trim in terms of getting rid of some of the dead stuff. That's absolutely fine. What I absolutely would not do at this time of year is prune it for the sake of pruning it. Why? Because if you prune into live wood, then the sap is rising, things are getting going, it will bleed sap and cause massive problems. So here I have a tree that had done quite well until last year, and it got inadvertently pruned by a power tool. Rather a sad story, really. A friend of mine actually dropped a power tool on it and broke 1 or 2 branches. As you can see, the main structure is still absolutely fine, but that was enough to do that kind of harm and kill the tree. So big steer from me, I'd leave well alone when it comes to pruning live wood. So as promised, really a bit of a reveal on which trees I would repot, and the correct answer was I can't tell you, Carl, because I haven't checked the roots yet. So those who've watched my previous videos would probably see this. But as a really good live example, I hope this will be helpful, having a look at the roots on this tree, and I would say I would leave that be, to be honest with you. Not very advanced, and even if I try and put it into a small pot like this, I'm going to have to kind of deform the roots a little bit to kind of squeeze it in. So in terms of pot size, I think the 15 centimetre alternative doesn't really work for me. The only instance I would do this is if the tree was kind of dying because it got really waterlogged, in which case I'd cram the tree's root ball into the smallest pot available, and that can really, really help in the long run. I've got an example of how I've saved the tree like that coming. But I'd say that the 17 centimetre of the pot there is fine. The big no-no is just don't put it into a great big pot like this. It's okay. If you do that this year, it'll probably be fine. We're through the sort of spring period now. The trees are leafing out. That will draw water out of the compost. But if you do this, you might think, well, it's all silliness. Why do I need to have a small pot? But if we get a really wet spring like we did last year, that will absolutely drown in the compost. The roots will rot and cause a massive problem. So the correct pot is definitely for me the one in the middle. If you actually pot on in small increments, the trees will grow faster in the long run. So you might think a big pot, I'll get a big tree. It's not the case. When they're more restricted, they genuinely do better. So note that leaving them in the little nursery pots is absolutely fine. It's worked really well. And moving on to the second tree, it's a really different story. That's really quite packed full of roots. To be honest, at this stage in the season, this is really important because it is spring here in the UK. I would really happily repot that, but really just that middle-sized pot, just slightly bigger. Why? Because it's got the rest of the year to grow. Those roots are going to expand. They're going to move into that compost. I've got other videos on how I do the actual repotting, so do go and watch those because I don't disturb that compost hardly at all. I just sort of put compost around the existing stuff. But yeah, that's a real winner, so absolutely why not. Another one here, packed full of roots, looking really healthy. Some trees, by the way, they do take a year, a whole season, maybe two, to sort of develop a root system. Nothing much happens on top. So just what's on top of the tree, and in this case, there isn't a great deal really. There's not a lot of branches and it doesn't look very significant, isn't a great guide at all, especially if you bought stuff from garden centres and stuff like that. They overfeed them, so what's on top looks massive, but the root system is really immature. So not such a great story really. And then we move on to this one. This one, again, is even better. It really is a mass of roots. Do you know what, though? If you wanted to leave this in that little pot for another year, it wouldn't do any harm whatsoever, honestly. That may seem counterintuitive, but yes, that would be fine. Even though that's quite spindly, it hasn't really leafed out yet. It doesn't look anything like as big as the second tree, for example. The proof is in the, not the pudding, but the roots, in fact. And that can make a huge difference. So please have a look at the roots. Some people on the internet say things like, no, you must leave them in this pot for an entire year because when you bought it, blah, blah, blah. Absolute rubbish. Have a look at the tree. Let it tell you what it needs, basically. So here's a tree that you may have seen before if you watch my videos. It's a Trompenberg. Believe it or not, this little fella is about 4 or 5 years old. But because it was overpotted, this is what's happened to it. I'm really pleased to say, because I downsized it and squished it into a really small pot, it has helped. It survived another winter. We're looking at another spring now. So, I'm not going to throw it away and start again. I think we'll persevere with that. But going for these great big pots, seriously bad idea. But as a time of year, I have no problem at all with potting in the spring. In fact, I can't see the point in repotting over the winter when they're dormant because they're just sitting a load of soggy compost. Definitely go for it. If you don't want to repot, by the way, you can always put them inside another pot and put some a ceramic pot so it looks a bit more attractive and maybe put some gravel around it. But honestly, let the tree make up its mind when it needs repotting. And here's Wendy, repotted in the spring a couple of years ago into a small increase in size. It was bigger than the other ones I showed you to start with, but as you can see in that small pot, it's done incredibly well.